Alright, I'm going to cover the assignment, this button, this is currently for spring of 2016. It might be used later as well. But let's talk about this for a second. The assignment seems simple, and it actually is. It says, to gain an understanding of policies, to create a password policy for an organization of your choice. Sounds simple, doesn't it? I've seen some really crappy password policies. Really, really crappy ones. Oh, like ours. Make sure it includes all the elements that a policy should, and basically, if you look at the guidelines, that might help. So what would a good password policy be?
Capital letter, lowercase letter, minimum of 8 characters.
Okay.
Special character.
Change it every 2 days.
Right. Well, not 2 days.
So there's a lot of aspects of this policy that we're not, that you can understand. Just linked is not the only good thing about a policy. But if we even forget what the hell the policy is about, what else does a policy need to be?
Usable.
That's one of them. Okay, so there's a lot of aspects of policies. So don't look at this just a password policy and just tell me to enter a good password. I want you to write it as a policy, and there's a lot of other aspects, and that's what this chapter talks about.
Like default, and how you issue it, and how you recover it.
Well, we're going to talk about some of these. Look through this chapter. There's a lot I cover in here. But, it's a course of action, like it says here. And we're going to get on to a section here, components of different policies. Now, this is an enterprise policy, but look over these components of it. They might pertain to your policy. Okay? Issue specific is kind of what you're doing here with a password policy. Why are you doing this policy? Would that be a good thing to include in a policy? Because, when I first got hired here, our policies and procedures manual was a lot thinner than it is now. The drug and alcohol enforcement policy basically said don't do drugs and don't drink. It was literally a paragraph.
It's like Google's Don't Be Evil.
That was modified until like a 14-page document. And now one aspect which you can look at in a second is you need to tell people about it. So what they did is they printed it out and they posted it on all the windows of the division offices. Because the policy is no good if people don't know about it. And about 5 years later, I asked the question, I'm like, does this thing still need to be posted on the window? No one knew the answer to that. Because it says, do not remove. Do not remove for 5 years? Is that long enough? So stuff like that I want you to start thinking about. Again, password policy is important. But think about the other components of a policy. So that's what I'm really going to be looking for. Yes, if you tell me your password is 2 characters, no, that's going to suck. But I'm looking for the other aspects of a policy as well. The purpose. Who's going to do it? What happens if you screw it up? What happens if you don't change your policy? Are you going to be fired? Well, password policy is easy enough. If you don't change, you can't get into the system. Okay? Review, modification. Do you think we should ever change our password policy? Probably. Something like that's what I want you to do on this. I went through this whole presentation and the aspects that I felt were important, I wrote down for me when I grade yours to make sure they're all there. I'm not going to tell them to you all because then you're just literally going to just, you know what you all do. Oh, review day. Okay, fine. It will be reviewed on Mondays. Now, I want you to look through here and you determine what should be on there. Okay? But review and modifications. Liability. What happens if you don't change your policy? Think about it. I got a crappy password here, and because of that, someone got into my computer and stole all my money. So can I sue the bank because they allowed me to use a crappy policy, crappy password? It's something to think about. You see where I'm going with this assignment? Don't just tell me 8 characters, uppercase, lowercase number. That's not good enough. Okay? There's a couple other aspects in here. I think there's actually... I was going to do an ACL one, but I didn't feel like going over that today. Come on, where are we at? And you can think of stuff like this. The investigation. Why do we even need a password policy? It just gets you thinking, okay? All right. And passwords are pretty simple, but I guess somebody. Okay, maintenance, big issue. Okay, when's it going to be updated? This policy will be reviewed quarterly, yearly, semi-annually, whatever. That should be included in there. Okay. Okay, distribution, big issue here. How are we going to get this password policy out? Are we going to print it out, stick it on every window for an unlimited amount of time? Or are we going to email everybody? Or maybe we're going to put a banner, or maybe 7 days before it expires, it's going to, just how are you going to get this out? So think about that way, okay? Let's see. So there's distribution, other ways. You can send it out via email. Like we have a password, not a password, a policy procedures menu here. We all have access to it. Roy, have you ever opened it?
The what?
Exactly. So I'm assuming since Roy probably doesn't even know where it is, he probably has never reviewed it. So I would not consider that a good way of getting a password or any sort of policy out. Do y'all agree with that statement?
Yeah.
It should be. And in reading, who's going to read it? Look at that first bullet there. Many jobs do not require literacy. So if I have a password policy, then no one, if I'm writing it for a PhD level compared to a fourth grader, but you need to think about the wording of it. Okay. Now I do not want you to make me one in Braille. Okay. Okay. My mom was blind. Okay. And I still remember to this day, she would literally sit there with those Braille books, and she'd like, shoo, with her hand just. She could read it that fast. I'm like, how are you doing that? And I still remember as a kid, she'd take us downtown shopping with her little stick. And I don't know how she did it. It was crazy. But I don't want you to go that in depth, but just think about things like this. Maybe this policy, maybe you put something in there about for visually impaired students, report to HR and have someone read it to you. I don't know, just something for you to think about. Multilingual. Well, what kind of organization you got? If I'm 7-Eleven, well, I better have it in 14 different languages, and that's just for the cashiers. Who knows the customers? Okay. Translation. Heck, there's so many apps nowadays that translate everything. So I just want you to start thinking of things. Okay. Comprehension. Here's another issue. Okay. Did they read it? Did they understand it? Okay. So maybe a quiz. Here's 5 passwords. Which one will meet this password policy?
I mean, if they have a password that the system accepts, isn't that a self-enforcing mechanism?
You could say that. That would be totally fine. That's what I'm saying. As long as you are somehow making sure it works. And you're right, with a password, that's easy enough. But password 1 with a capital P number 1 is a good password. Password 2 with a capital P number 2 is another good password. But is that a good password?
No.
No, it's not.
However,
But it meets the complexity rules.
if you replace it with leak characters for other,
There you go.
it's even stronger.
But so just because now if your rules, like when I had to set my password up for the NSA for certifications, 12 to 14 characters, that's a very small window. 2 uppercase, 2 lowercase, 2 numbers, and 2 special characters is like, wow. There's really not much left over to go with, and you ain't gonna make a word. There's no way out of that. But the problem with that is if you make them too complex, now people can write them down.
That's a nice feature of LastPass is that it has
Oh.
the password generator, which
Oh, I
you
love that.
command to make pronounceable.
Yep. Which is, I haven't tried the pronounceable one yet.
It works very well.
Okay. But I haven't done that. But I love the fact it generates. And I was actually thinking about today. I had to log into my OSU account, and I'm like, I have no idea what my password. I didn't need to know my password. It's 30 characters random generated. So it doesn't matter what it is. But it was just thinking, if I did not have LastPass, I wouldn't be getting in right now.
I had to make a password policy for a company that used LastPass, and it was really just more of an illustrative guide to
Right.
here are the ways that you use it and how it's issued and everything. Would that count?
That wouldn't. Yeah, that'd be fine. You could you're telling them to use LastPass store. Yeah. So there's really no right or wrong as long as you cover all the aspects that need to be in a policy. Again, I'm using a password policy as an example, but I'm really looking for the other stuff. Okay? So comprehension is a big issue. Readability, just so people can understand it. What happens if you don't do it right? Again, passwords, you could get locked out. And technically, if your system set it correctly and you pick a crappy password, I shouldn't be able to see it anyway. If you think about it. If I choose password 1, password 2, password 3, and keep going to infinity, the system shouldn't never complain, and no one should be able to know about it because no one should know it. So it's kind of one of those things. You should not use this. But, really, compliance is kind of a moot point with a password policy. If you don't change it, you're not getting into the system. But what if you can't change it? I was on a cruise ship. My password expired, so how do I change it? Luckily, I could remotely, from the cruise ship, get into my work PC and change my password. Because you have to be inside the network to change the password. So, I just want you to put some thought into these different areas.
I think for D2L you can have up to 61 characters.
Yeah, and it would be nice if
Why would you
D2L...
want 61 characters?
It's random. It's like my 30-character password. I mean, no one's ever going to get it. That's what we use for Twitter and all those accounts. And it just, I tell you,
It's the beginning of the Gettysburg Address, just with numbers and special characters.
it makes it so you don't have to worry about it, is all I know. So I don't have to worry about it. Okay, so compliance, enforcement. You must change. So how would you enforce a password? Well, you're going to force them to change it. But there's a lot of systems out there that don't force them to change it. So make sure, if you're going to say the system itself will require you to change it, well, then make sure it's the system that does require you to change it. A lot of websites don't. A lot of systems don't. So,
Have you ever changed your LastPass password?
Yes, I have actually.
It's an experience.
Yes, it is, and it's one of those like, oh crap, if I forget this, I'm screwed for life. Right, so, but just think about stuff like that. Even if you have this section in there and you say password enforcement will be handled by the Windows system, whatever, that's totally fine. I just know that you covered it. Okay? There are automated tools for looking at passwords or looking at policies, and they can actually check the reading comprehension and so on and so forth. Not really critical, but they are there. Okay? I think there's one other section I wanted to look at. A final note, this is designed to improve productivity, okay, prevent potential embarrassing situations. So a lot of different reasons why we're doing this, okay, can help avoid litigation. Again, I mean, I've never seen this issue, but if you think about it, if my bank let me use a crappy password, couldn't I come back and say, you didn't require me to make a good one. I didn't know what a good one was, and I lost all my money. Think about it. My bank doesn't require me to change it. Does y'all's banks?
Yes.
Mine gives you the option.
I can change mine, but they don't require me to change mine.
They highly suggest you change it. They definitely make me change my security questions every 3 months.
But what happens since they're not requiring me to change my password? Technically, if I get robbed, I could really say they didn't make me change it, so really it's their fault. They didn't tell me I should have changed it. I don't know. Just something to think about in that aspect. Okay? There was one of these notes. The review to be effective, must be properly. Just look over the summary section because it does touch on a lot of them. Must be properly written, distributed, read, understood, agreed upon, and uniformly applied. That one bullet is a lot of parts there of what you need to be looking at. Okay? Penalties, violating the policy, appeals process. Again, password policy is kind of hard to do all that stuff, but you could see where I was getting this from. Okay? Everybody okay on what the assignment is? Pretty simple, but I'm making it a lot tougher because I want you to do it as if it was any type of policy. I mean, drinks in the classroom policy, or anything. Why are we doing that? Or, stuff like that. So, easy enough. You got a week to do it. I put it up there earlier, so you'll be fine. No questions? Everybody happy? Okay. I promise I will get your exam grades up there soon. I could release them now. I just have to put the percentages for those of you who did it early. All right. That's all we got for the assignment then.